Hi everyone, so this is the slow Holler tarot, which I have found an instant connection with that I received in December, towards the end of December, because it's close to Christmas. I remember just before, just after. I received this in 2016 December. It is now mid-January 2017. I've shared this really briefly about decks I'll be working with in 2017, and I also made some comments about how I regret the fact that I wouldn't be able to nominate this as Deck of the Year for this year, because for the Theosophy Tarot Association Award, because this was this was published in 2016. In any case, here we have the Death card. This is the card which made me fall in love with this deck, and I've missed the Kickstarter campaign by the time I found out about it. It was already in production, but the pre-order wasn't set up so that international shipping can be combined for order of more than one deck. I've ordered two because of shipping considerations, and so it took me a while to finally be able to order or pre-order this deck. And so when I finally managed, I was really happy. So there's a lot of flip through already on YouTube, and a lot of sharing of these cards on social media as people begin to receive their copy. So I'm not going to flip through the whole thing. I'm trying desperately to make a short video, as short as possible. There it is. This is another one that really just grabbed me. And these two cards are the ones which made me decide that I don't care about the rest of the deck. I want it. And so this is a project, I believe. There are 4 writers, and I've read in the handbook, I can't remember, there's several artists, but I think each artist are in charge of more than one card. And I think there is a sort of guiding rule where the color scheme is made uniform across artwork. So my point is that although this is done by a variety of artists using different styles, the deck is very cohesive in my opinion. My other combined collaborative deck is the Cosmos Tarot and Oracle, and I found them to be very cohesive as well. Cardstock, some people say the cardstock is not ideal or is not as great as they expected. Perhaps sometimes our satisfaction relies heavily on our expectations. In this case, I have no expectations of the cardstock. And when it arrived, when this deck arrived, when these two decks arrived, I looked through it, I touched it, I feel it. I personally feel that the cardstock is very much in sync and in line with the feel of the artwork as I had imagined and expect it to be. I can't say anything other than I feel that this deck is just perfect. The cardstock isn't the sexiest, most amazing ever. It reminds me of Llewellyn's new thicker cardstock, and I'm not a fan of Llewellyn's cardstock, but I don't mind their thicker ones because I don't riffle shuffle, I overhand shuffle. But this is very matte and very smooth. When you shuffle, you can hear that shush 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 sort of feel sound, very much like the shuffling of the Wild Unknown. But it isn't as thickly laminated, or it doesn't feel as if it's that thickly laminated. Other input I've seen around social media is that some people feel this is not queer enough and not Southern USA enough. Others are glad because then the rest of us can enjoy the beautiful insights and stories that this deck is retelling about the 78 archetypes. Others yet feel that this is catered to too narrow a segment of society, and I would like to respectfully disagree, because I am neither queer nor Southern USA. I am a middle-aged Asian, multicultural, non-American person, and I am as hetero as they come. And I find extreme resonance with this deck because the point of view of this deck, or the voice of this deck, is one which reject the imposition of established norms. And so for those of us who struggle with binaries of any kind, in this case gender binary in this deck, but for me personally, if you've seen my other video on changing the narrative of culture, heritage and identity, or changing the narrative on identity and heritage, a sense of needing to be one or the other and not being allowed to be somewhere in between, of being both this and that, or of being neither. And so I found that that's quite universal. I quite like the take on that as well. It's both balance and transformation, so I found that quite important to be depicted in Two of Coins. Oh, the other thing is the quartz. So I got into a conversation with Veronica on her comment section when she was going through her copy of this deck, and she said, you know, she sees the architect to precede the visionary, and the visionary to be at the end of that cycle. And then I said, oh, isn't that actually the case? I could have sworn that the succession of the court cards goes student, traveler, architect, and visionary. So she said, go to page so and so. So I flipped through this. By then I've worked with the cards, I've gone through these other ones, but I haven't actually, I didn't bother looking at the renamed cards index, because to me it doesn't matter what it, well, for the what you call it, for the major arcana perhaps, but I looked through the succession and quickly found out which cards are renamed what, just looking at the succession of the cards as I flipped through it for the first time. These ones were quite easily established as you flip through the cards as well. And so as I flipped through the card, of course I remembered the succession goes student, traveler, architect, and visionary. And so I flipped through this, and of course I found the architect to be king and visionary to be queen, and I thought, oh, that must be a misprint because it should go page, knight, queen, and king. And then I saw court cards break from the gender binary and follow more of a progression rather than a hierarchy. And I suddenly realized, or it occurred to me, that the king and queen are swapped around on purpose. And so I've concluded, though, that the cycle as depicted by the worldview of the slow Holler deck is so clear to me, and student, traveler, architect, visionary is an elegant illustration, description, manifestation, is an elegant story, is an elegant personification of the court cycle, or of the cycle that we understood the court cards to be, the face cards. And my own personal life experience, of course, come to play here. As you know, as a student, I remember being enclosed in a room in my parents' house, studying in the library within institutions, passively taking in knowledge. And then you graduate, and we have what some of you call gap year, and some of us say OE, overseas experience. We travel the world. We see different cultures, different countries, different realities, and I felt I was already exposed to that even before higher education. I moved around since I was really young. So growing up, I've always felt like I have more than just one set of head. I felt like I have two sets of head, and the more I see of the world, I feel like I grew my heads in numbers. I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 heads. Each of the head, each pairs of eyes, each sets of mouth and tongue speak different languages and see different worlds and different perspectives. And it's more than just different pairs of glasses and lenses, but it is also different brains, different translating different smells, different ways of thinking, different ways of not only seeing the world, but understanding it, speaking it, hearing it, everything. That's this feeling of growing multiple sets of heads. And then you come back to whichever country you call home, or you decided on a place in the world that you will hang your hat in and call that home, and you start building. You start using the things that you've gathered from around the world, the knowledge that you've gathered, passive learning, active learning, and here you start producing and reproducing. And in my head I have this images of my colleagues. Because of my area of discipline, I am exposed or mostly work with government institutions, and I have colleagues who went away on scholarships or self-funded, studied overseas, taken new cultures, understanding point of views, etc. Similarly, the way I have done, and they came back and build new treatment groups or measuring tools or assessment tools, started applying different ways of creating different orders of the world. And they spearheaded a variety of different things on a policy level, on a program design level, and that changed how people are dealt in court and so on and so forth. And that is true for other disciplines as well, I believe, whether you're a lawyer or a mathematician or an IT person or a crafts person. And so that's the architect, where you create, recreate, build. And as you progress, you obtain more and more view, and you can see bird's eye, that bird's eyes view, that vision from the top, and you see this vast vista of things that you do not have vantage point beforehand. Now you do, and you become a visionary, and you become head of departments or ministry of this and that, and you decide on policy, and you decide on which way for your nation or your community or your society to go and really make a difference. And so that is true in art as well, I'm sure. I can't really say offhand, but like apprenticeship maybe, and then you become a skilled craft person, and then you start building things, exploring styles perhaps of artistic style as you are on that traveler stage, and then you really build something of your own, and then you move further up into this visionary position where you can see everything from a macro point of view. I could go on, but this is, I feel, is a very, very elegant, today's world, relatable, everyday, modern understanding of the cycle that represents by the court cards. And so I said to Veronica, I think going back to the Rider-Waite-Smith or whatever this is, of page knight, king and queen, it's just, it's good to have, I suppose, if you need that, if you need to pin it down. But to be frank with you, I personally believe this is more productive like this. Just understanding that on its own right, student, traveler, architect, visionary, I think is a very elegant chord system. And so that is it, really. I really like this deck. And once again, I'm not queer, I'm not Southern USA, and I beg to differ if somebody said that this kind of deck won't work for someone like me. I'm hetero as well, as I've already mentioned, excuse me. And so this come highly recommended. I highly, highly recommend this deck. It's not just a quirky deck, it's not just, what do you call it, gimmicky, thematic deck. It is a very sensible voice in here of people who do not take the status quo lying down, of people who insist on showing the world things beyond the established norms. So highly recommended. Bye.